All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is the Future Proof Podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined with Lohit and Francesca. Francesca is company's name is Neftwork Inc. She is the owner and founder, and she's just going to start off and tell us a little bit about her business and what they're all about. Thank you
Thank you.
for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
At Neftwork, we're building the future of the contemporary art market. And by that, I mean, we're utilizing blockchain tools for the current existing art market to make cross-border transactions faster and more cost-effective, digital certificate of provenance for all artwork sold, a digital passport for those artworks, which are actually going to keep us in compliance with the European Union's desire to have a passport for all products sold. And as well as, most importantly for me, is making sure that artists receive continuous royalties. With Web3, we can do that now, and it's something that the art market's been wanting to do for a long time. When I talk about the art market, I do mean painting, sculpture, digital performance, all of it. So the entirety of art creation that's currently part of an existing $65 billion market is where we build the tools for artist professionals, galleries, and then the trickle down is to artists.
Okay. Now, it's pretty niche and that's, very focused. Is there any other companies like yourself? Do you have any competition, or are you kind of like a leader in this kind of space?
Yes, it is surprising to me that there's actually fewer companies even attempting this. And one of the interesting things about this market is there has been historically very little business and tech investment into the art market, even though it is, one of the largest asset class. It's a $110 billion asset class. And the one asset class, as we're talking about, RWAs and moving these things onto a Web3 platforms that has the least amount of regulation hoops to go through. So it's one of the reasons, not only are we sort of like defining for this market, which is a market that I've been in for 30 years and is why it made the most sense to me, but it's also like a test case for RWAs that can potentially, as we're moving to numerous things, having that sort of digital passport, as it were. As far as competitors, there is Arcual, which is backed by UBS and Art Basel. It's a bit of a top-down sort of system. So even though it is blockchain enabled, it is a private blockchain with a consensus mechanism that requires you to be within a certain circle of artist professionals. And so we're building a platform that, one, we find it much more agile to basically actually build on other blockchain platforms where things are happening every single day. We're building on Stellar literally every day. Something is being developed, and I can utilize that and stay agile with my business rather than building my own blockchain where I have to keep up with the innovations at every turn. Other than that, there's just a deep misunderstanding about what an NFT is. It was never an artwork, even when it was, a monkey. How art has value. It's one of the reasons why coming in with art industry acumen becomes really important in this particular business.
So what is an NFT?
So a non-fungible token, it isn't even something that's necessarily digital. And one of the ways in which I teach my audience, which is the art market, about this is the other kinds of non-fungible tokens that exist. One of them that I love to talk about is Yves Klein, who created zones of pictorial immateriality. And it was hair that he sold, and there was a receipt that said that you owned that portion of zone of immaterial pictoriality. And that is an NFT. I mean, that's basically what an NFT is. It represents that you are the owner of this particular object, particularly when we're talking about RWAs. And so the concept, the way that it's been talked about in the media and the NFT hype, it really misunderstands that this is actually just something like very simple. A fungible token, like a dollar, is a fungible token, or a quarter, or any of those things. They're all the same value. Whereas a non-fungible token means it is something that is individualized and therefore has its own intrinsic value that isn't based on other tokens.
Yeah, I think the only one that I can say off the top of my head is like Gary V's. He's got V Friends or whatever. I think he's got something like that too. And I think also one of my friends, right when they started, they were doing like sports cards, NFT style. Oh, that's kind of what draws me back. Okay, so I mean, if you're focused on helping the art community kind of go to Web3, what difficulties or challenges are you having to achieve that?
I think that the hurdle that we needed to cross, which was a lot easier than I actually anticipated, was that dearth of information about what the utility of these technologies are, as opposed to the way that they had been used and hyped about, which was kind of the antithesis to the way the art market works. And so there was a lot of apprehension seeing that sort of NFT craze that had absolutely nothing to do with the existing market. They felt as if it had nothing to do with them. And when I started talking about this and in these art communities, like for example, the first time I started talking about this was at the Frieze Art Fair in London. And I was surprised that people just started coming towards me as I was speaking, like from from around, we're walking the art fair, come closer and closer. And someone said to me, I thought it was a scam, but when you talk about it, it sounds like something I want to be part of. That's when I realized that we needed a voice that really deeply understood the market and could be able to explain it to them in a language that made sense. And that was kind of one of the impetuses for me to start Neftwork.
It's interesting. Now, do you have a more focused like kind of niche that you're helping out with, like galleries, collectors, artists, is all of them at once? Or you kind of specialize in anyone specifically?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we learned from our customer validation, of which we did an extensive customer validation, was that these Web3 tools for our niche or for anyone, frankly, some of the difficulties of that barrier of the non-crypto natives, as they're called, or everybody else, is that there's that usability factor still. Things like MetaMask, for example, which is what people were first utilizing for purchasing artworks, NFTs or otherwise, right? And like there's no customer service. People didn't understand, if you're not part of that world, it feels really foreign and very scary. So when we build a Neftwork, we're sort of thinking about that shift in Web 2 when Microsoft came online and started making it for the average user to be able to utilize some of these tools, some of these computer-enabled, web-enabled tools. And so with that being said, to answer your question, we are building an entire suite of tools that literally translates the entire current market into Web 3. But we're doing that in a tiered approach. And it's one of the reasons where like our tagline, we call it the Neftwork effect, is by each of the different products that we bring in on board, we're also increasing the market by which we are now enabling and utilizing in Web 3. The first thing, the very first barrier is that wallet. One of the most difficult things to kind of understand with Web3 is that there isn't a custodian holding on to your money. You need like a wallet to the asset itself. Like you now hold not only your own money, but you hold your own assets. Nobody else is the custodian for that for you, at least the way that we're building, which is a non-custodial wallet. So that first part, we call it My Pocket Gallery. We wanted to make it very simple about what it is. That's exactly what it is. You buy the artwork. You basically have a stored archive of all the works that you own. You have their token addresses. There's a social media platform, which we're using also as a way to educate, because anybody can download the app without putting in an email or anything. That's one of the things that we want to differentiate to make some of these tools more easy, is recognize that we have to embed education within our applications so that we basically use the social media not only to talk to our audience, but then as the audience becomes more comfortable, then the audience can talk to our audience, and then that grows and grows and grows. So this kind of concept of the Neftwork effect is really built into our business plan on multiple ways. And so then that's also part of, like, once we have the My Pocket Gallery, which is for the collector, in place, the next important step is onboarding galleries so that they can put their entire inventory, mint their inventory, and make them available to purchase through these tools like these, like My Pocket Gallery.
Now, are these actual like paintings that are turned into a digital product then people can own, or kind of how does that work? If I'm your customer coming from a gallery, explain kind of like basically what happens when you onboard me and take me on as a client.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how it currently works. And then I'm going to show, it's sort of the best way to put it into print. Because one of the things is like getting through that digital thing is what is really causing the miscommunication. So right now, if I was to buy a work of art, I walk into a gallery, I say, oh, this piece, I'd like this piece. The gallerist will take a little red sticker and they'll put it on the wall. They'll take out a piece of paper and ask me to write down my information. And then at some point in the week, somebody will contact me. We'll go through the process of trying to figure out what kind of cross-border payments, whose family office is going to pay for what. And then, weeks to months to years, the artist will get paid because of how long this takes. So all we're doing is digitizing that action. So now when you say, I'd like to purchase this piece, you can purchase it straight through your phone, through My Pocket Gallery. And what that does is it does your cross-border payment, and it gives you your digital certificate of provenance. So right now, when you buy a work of art, that certificate of provenance is the thing that says that you are the owner of that work. Without that certificate of provenance, the value of that work is not the same. And in fact, in some cases, it can be worth absolutely nothing without that. When I started Neftwork, I had to sell some of my prized collections. My favorite artist, Kara Walker, and I took a certificate of provenance that was in a steel file folder for 20 years in order to take that and sell it. So in this case, the NFT or the RWA or the smart contract, what it's doing is replacing that certificate of provenance. An NFT was never an artwork. When you were looking at digital art, like say any of those, meme coin, any of that stuff, the image does not live in Web3, and it never has. And that's the kind of the misconception that people have. All you get with your NFT is to say that you own this digital image that lives in the world in most cases. This is something that also like collectors didn't recognize, that they also have to preserve their work, just like you do with a painting. You know, if you're not going to, you know, you need to have it stored, it needs to be in climate control. You have to store bytes too, or else they don't exist anymore. And that's kind of like, and I think that's where that big misconception about what an NFT is when it's related to art that has really kept this huge potential from being realized.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. That's super helpful. So where are you finding your clients? Kind of how are you connecting with them? How are you, connecting with galleries? What does that look like?
Well, luckily, having come from the art market, this was already part of my community. And I think that that's one of the sort of like the linchpins that makes this successful. It is also true that although we're talking about, like I said, it's $65 billion yearly industry, that's give or take in the last couple of years, and then a $110 trillion asset class, but the number of people that are actually part of that numbers is a really small group comparatively to a lot of other markets. So we also are doing things very differently than a lot of businesses right now. So there's no cold calls, LinkedIn's, texting, that kind of stuff. We literally have met over 500 galleries face to face in the last 2 years. And we do that at art fairs. The one that most people in the business community know about is Art Basel Miami Beach, but that's actually just one of the Art Basel fairs. Art Basel was a town in Switzerland, and they've been having an art fair for decades longer than the Miami fair. 40% of art is sold, contemporary artwork is sold at an art fair. And the remainder of it, most contemporary galleries get their collectors through that exposure. So by being present there, we can literally cut through any other marketing and go straight to the source and develop these relationships, which is the way that the art market works. And without that piece, really, that's, I think, one of the disconnects between the business world is how different the art market operates. It's very nuanced, and that's what we bring to it that makes it successful.
What excites you most about the future of your company?
I'm really excited about the potential for not only empowering artists to make a decent living and to be able to, make sure that they're getting continuous royalties, things like that just have never had access to. But also when you sort of talk about what the art world is today and what the art world could be 10 years from now, that's what gets me really excited. So right now it is a really niche, nuanced market that very few people know and understand about. And in order to be part of it, you do have to be in these rarefied spaces. But what we can do once it becomes commonplace and we have transitioned the current existing market to tokenization, and tokenization becomes the norm, then the potential for additional projects, companies, institutions really open up. So now with My Pocket Gallery, for example, if you're a gallery in Nigeria and you're, showing local artists and you don't have the money to go to any of these big art fairs, you can showcase on My Pocket Gallery. And I can sit here in Philadelphia and say, wow, this artist is really interesting. I'd like to participate in that. And it gives the opportunity, like right now, you ask 10 people on the street what their favorite band is, everybody can answer that question. Even if they're like, well, it's not just one or whatever. You ask them who their favorite contemporary artist is. I've tried it. It's extremely rare to find a single person that can name that. And that's that distance that we currently have in this market, but it doesn't need to be there, especially now. So while we open up that market, the potential for this asset class, this opportunity and everything to explode is, in my opinion, is huge.
I'm guilty. I probably can't answer a contemporary artist, but I can tell you my favorite band for sure. No, but I'm gonna definitely go check out your app and My Pocket Gallery for sure. So if people are trying to connect with you, what's your website, where IG, Instagram, wherever you are, kind of throw that out there so people can find you.
We're at Neftwork. Our website is www.neftwork.com. It's NEFTWERK.com. My Pocket Gallery is not launched to the public yet, but it will be this fall. And we're really excited. I think I can't talk about it yet.
Yeah.
I had another meeting today for something really exciting that's coming up in fall.
Well, we'll have to have you back on when it launches so then we can add all that information to the next one too. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure. And we'll
Absolute
talk soon.
pleasure, Alex. Anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye bye.